Hello, and welcome to another episode of Math with Dr. War. Today we're going to look at task-like problems that involve the equation of the line. Let's begin. Now for the task, when they talk about the equation of the line, we're always going to be looking at the slope-intercept form, which is y equals to mx plus b. And you've learned from previous videos that your m is your slope and the b is your y-intercept. And to write your y-intercept as a point, it is 0, b. With all that information, you should be able to, when you read your word problem, identify your slope and your y-intercept. So let's begin. So our problem states the French tongue roller rink charges $5 entrance fee and an hourly rate for roller skating. The total cost for roller skating depends on the number of hours a person skates. The table below represents the total cost of skating for a different number of hours. So we have our table here, roller skating cost, number of hours H, total cost, and dollars C. Which equation represents the relationship between the cost and the number of hours H? Now, when you read your problem, some of you may have realized that this $5 entrance fee is actually your y-intercept. So that $5 entrance fee is your y-intercept because the y-intercept is your initial or beginning value. If you didn't figure out that the y-intercept was 5, you could have gone here to the table. Now in the table, you see this first column here which says number of hours. This is actually your X. And the total cost in dollars, these represent your Y values. Now remember, your Y-intercept is 0, B. Look at this. If we write this as a point, this is 0, 5. So right here, this is my Y-intercept within my table. So remember, the equation of the line is y equals mx plus b. So our equation, and I'm going to write it as y, is going to have a plus 5. So if I look through my answers, the first one says c equals 8h. There's no plus 5. That's eliminated. This says c equals to 5h plus 3. That 3 is not your y-intercept, so that can be eliminated. Over here, this has a plus 7 as the y-intercept, so you can eliminate, and there's your answer. So I found my answer without even finding the slope. It is that simple. Sometimes you can just look in the problem and you can just have to identify your slope or identify your y-intercept and get your answer. Now suppose I wanted to find a slope. Remember, we're finding the slope from a table. So we're going to look at the trend. Now, how do I go from 5 to 8? I'm adding 3. How do I go to 8 to 11? I'm adding 3. 11 to 14, plus 3. And 14 to 17, plus 3. Let's look at the X. What is their pattern? 0 to 1, I'm adding 1. 1 to 2, plus 1. 2 to 3, same thing, I'm adding 1. 3 to 4, plus 1. And remember what our slope is? Our slope is the change in y over the change in x. So our slope is, how is the y changing? We'll keep adding 3 all the time. However, our x changing, we're always adding 1. And 3 divided by 1 is 3. So your slope here is supposed to be 3, and then you have your x. Now I know they didn't use y and x, they use c. So if we use their c here, will represent your y, and then you have 3 and your x is h. So you have c equals 3h plus 5. But I didn't have to do all of that. By figuring out that 5 was the y-intercept, I looked in my equations and d was the only one that had the y-intercept of 5. And then to prove that it was D, I went and found my slope by just looking at the pattern for the y and for the x. Now suppose you're given a line graph. How do you find the equation? So this example states a company uses a graph to show the cost for shipping an envelope. For example, an envelope that weighs 5 ounces costs $4 to ship. So how did they find that information? So they went into their line graph. They were shipping a 5-ounce envelope, so they found 5 here on the x-intercept. They went all the way up, touched the line, and then they went all the way across to the y-intercept and saw that a 5-ounce letter will cost $4 to ship. So that's how they figured out 5 ounces cost $4 to ship. Now our problem states if C of x, so when you see that C of x, that is your y, if C of x is the cost to ship an envelope that weighs x ounces, which function can be used to calculate the shipping cost? So basically they just want the equation. Now from here we can figure out our y-intercept. So right here, that is our y-intercept. That is where our line cuts the y-axis at 3. So remember, an equation of the line is y equals to mx plus b, and we figured out our b is 3, and it's a positive 3. We can eliminate a, I don't see a plus 3 there, and we can eliminate b, I don't see a plus 3. Your line should always cut your y-axis. So our answer is either C or D. So with this one, we have to actually find the slope. All right, let's find the slope. Let's pick 2 points. So I'm going to choose this point here, which is at 10, and this point here, which is at 1 on the x-axis, because this is my x-axis. And for my y-axis, I am using right here at 5. So this is what I'm using. So right here, I'm going from 3 to 5. How do you go from 3 to 5? You basically have to add 2. So to go from $3 to $5, I have to add 2. And then to go from here, which is 0, all the way to 10 is 10 units. And notice I'm going to the right, so it's a positive 10. So remember, slope is the change in y over the change in x. So my change in my y was 2, and my change in my x was 10. Now I have 2 over 10, which is a fraction. I'm going to reduce this. I'm going to divide both of them by 2. I'm going to get 1 over 5. But they wrote their slope as a decimal, so I have to go here and actually divide this 1 over 5. So 5 is my divisor, 1 is my dividend, put a decimal point. You could actually put this in a calculator, but I'm just going to do it by hand. 5 goes into 1 0 times, 5 goes into 10 2 times. I'm finished. So it's 0.2. My slope is 0.2x. Okay, what looks like my equation here? It is C. So your answer is C. So in this problem, we had to actually find the y-intercept. That was the easiest part. And then we had to do some calculations to find the slope. Okay, last problem. This is another line graph. So it says the graph shows the distance between an airplane in flight and its destination. So notice you have the distance to the airport. Your y-axis is distance in miles. Your x-axis is the time in hours. And they want to know which equation can be used to calculate the distance d between the airplane and the airport in relation to the number of hours h that the airplane has been flying. So remember, the equation of the line is y equals mx plus b. Now from our graph, we can identify our y-intercept, which is right here. So this 1200 is my y-intercept, plus 1200. I can eliminate a, because there's no plus 1200 there. I can eliminate b, it does not have a y-intercept. So my answer is C or D. Okay. Now another way I can get my answer really quickly is to determine what type of slope I have, because notice your slope is the 300 and they have a plus 300 and a minus 300. So what type of slope do I have? Is it positive? Is it negative? Remember, when you're reading your line, you go from left to right. So I'm starting from here and watch my pencil. It is going down. This is a negative slope. And between C and D, who has the negative slope? D. So D is my answer. Now, if you actually want to calculate the slope, I'm going to use this 1200 and I'm going to use this point right here. So basically, slope, when you have a graph, we like to use rise over run. Or if you want to, you can use the change of y over the change in x. Let's see how our changes go. So I'm going to draw my triangle. And you all know I like to do my rise as a positive. So I'm going to go up this way and then across this way. All right, let's go. So how many units am I rising? So I'm starting at 0 and I'm going all the way to 1200. So I am rising 1200 units. So, or miles. I'm going to call it units, 1200. So I'm rising 1200 because I start at 0 and I end at 1200. Okay, now we're going from here all the way to the end. Now you're starting at 4. We're running to the left and we're trying to get to 0. So if you go all that way, I'm telling you, you're going from 4 to 3.5 to 3 to 2.5, yada yada. At the end point, we would have traveled 4 units. But because we went to the left, it's negative 4. So 1200 divided by negative 4 is negative 300. So your slope is negative 300x. But as you can see, they did not write their equation like how we wrote our equation. Notice they put their 1200 first and then their minus 300h. But remember, our h is our x because that's our x-axis. I hope this has been helpful. Good luck in your TASC examination.